I'm Ronnie Satmeyer, and today in the studio we're going to break down a mix that I did for Bronson Wagner. The song is Chasing the Daylight. I did this mix, started inside the box a little bit, and then was trying to be quick and easy. He wanted something quick, and I wasn't happy with what I was taking out to the car. So I decided to go back to my normal way of stemming outside of the box. And I'm not breaking every channel down outside of a summing box right now. I'm just using a dangerous D box for right now. And I'm doing drums on like 1 and 2. I think I decided to do the whole mix out 1 and 2. And then 3 and 4 is the mix bus paralleled. 5 and 6 is the drums, and that's paralleled. And then 7 was a parallel for a guitar, just to add an effect on it. And 8, I paralleled the lead vocal, and that's where the parallel is going. So I'm kind of just doing a parallel 2-bus mix. But the fact that I'm running out through here, through some hardware, is adding the color that I want. And it just got me in the zone where I wanted to be with this mix. So his demo, we'll start with, sounded like this that he did in his studio. Okay, and then same thing where we ended up kind of is here.
Chasing the daylight as it's running away.
All right, we'll go through those. So I guess I can work backwards. And we'll start with the 2-bus because that's what we're going to hear everything going through, even though if I take all the plugins off of a kick drum, you're still going to hear that kick drum running through this path, so it's going to be part of the color. So right now, the 2-bus, I'm sending the entire mix out these stems right here. So I did drums on this bus, percussion on this bus, bass, keys, strings, acoustic guitar, electric guitars, vocals, and then all the effects come down this bus. They all go out A, right here. And that comes out 1 and 2, straight into my dangerous 2 channels. Channels 1 and 2 come out my Apollo. They're gonna go in to the West Audio compressor, the Dion. And then out of the compressor into this EQ, and yeah, I kind of got them set correctly yet. And then out of those EQs, that goes into channels 1 and 2 on the dangerous. I sent 3 and 4, which is the parallel of the 2-bus, right here. I'll play those 2 back to back in a second. They come out, and normally I go into the overstayer right here. But I chose the distressor instead of, I like these on drum buses, but I ended up doing it on the parallel mix. And that comes into the dangerous on channels 3 and 4. And then, and with that parallel, that's not the entire, that's, I think, yeah, everything but the drums and percussion. So the whole mix goes down the 2 channels to the SSL EQ, actually West Audio EQ, the Pultex into the dangerous. The B bus, kind of doing the Andrew Shep style parallel thing here. That's bass and key, strings, acoustic guitar, electric guitars, vocals, effects. All that comes out 3 and 4. That's what's going through the distressor and back in, and I'm kind of blending to taste a little bit. So I'll play just that. So without the parallel, get up to a vocal. All right, and if I put that parallel in, and I'm not even hitting it that hard. Let me see. Yes, I'm just trying to get around 2-3 dB, but blend it in with it. From a gray sky dawning, it's kind of just what's adding its glue to it. And then once that's inside the Dangerous, there's also a drum parallel we'll go over in a second, but once the mix comes out of there, it goes into the Cappy Audio VP28s to add some color to this with its op amps and transformers. Then once we're back in the box here, when I return the whole mix in, I'm using a Fairchild compressor, lightly touching the whole thing. It's running away toward the horizon. It's hardly kicking in. The NIS compressor, this is just a control for that SSL style, the West Audio. And I'm doing some weird little dipping here. I noticed in the car and on some other systems there were some weird little low-endy things happening. I started with that one, and I probably came back to this one, kind of an overall, did a some cut, and then I did a little dip here, just to soften it with a dynamic EQ. A little lift here in the 3.2K area, and a lift at 11K, and that. Those plugins with everything outside the box gets printed. So we'll do the drums a second, and you can hear, here's the drums without the parallel. The drums Bronson did, he programmed with Easy Drummer, indie folk, and then I kind of added a kick, a fat sound kick and snare to it, and tweak the tones a little bit with some plugs. So the parallel I ended up doing ended up being to the overstayer, coming out 5 and 6 to the overstayer compressor, squeezing it a pretty good bit, and then coming out of that into the Chandler TG2 and driving the input a little hard to get a little hair and a little crunch out of the sound. And that goes back into the Dangerous on 5 and 6 here. So I'm doing all those stems like that because now I'm not creating like a phase or a latency trying to, like, you know, keep a drum mix in the box and then keep the drum mix in the box and then turn around and return another one to this, you know, a channel next to it. To me, I end up getting a lot of phase that way with the summing outside of the box. And now I used to mix with a Fulcrum, and now I'm just got another one I'm actually going to add back into the rig. So here's just that. That's without the compression. With it. That's the EQ. There's a little EQ boost and top on this overstayer. And we're hearing the TG there. So that's the drums without the parallel. And the width. So it's just kind of smacking the top down harder. And the only thing I'm sending there, I'm not sending the entire drum kit. I'm sending just the kicks, the snares, and the toms, it looks like, out of that Easy Drummer kit. So we'll start with the kick, and I'll show you what he had on. So it's kind of a grindy, thick kick drum in there. I use the Brainworks 4000 on it. Added some top, really pushing like 4K. Compressing it a little bit, not a ton. I mean, they're already recorded well, they're samples, you know, but I'm trying to dress it up and treat it like a real kit. It's pretty boomy, and I had all this extra sub stuff. We decided we wanted the bass to growl more than the kick, so I'm cutting out some of this stuff here just to control that super low stuff. I mean, it's really hard to hear without a sub or a full range system. And then I wanted to add another kick. So I got this from That Sound. Just drier, thuddier. And I just put a little Reaper EQ on it to cut off a little sub on it, not much. And then together, so the one is pretty dirty sounding. The snare from that kit sounds like this. And I did a little API. I usually stick with SSL stuff on drums, but on this song I was using the API all over this whole session, the legacy channel strip. So put this on. So just add a little crack to the top, pushing at 200 in the bottom pretty good, cutting out some 500. I've got the compressor on, but I'm not even tapping it hardly. I'm not using the gate, cutting out like 30 hertz. And then I'm relying on the distressor a little bit for some more grit and just smacking the top. And just like this kick, I wanted to do a That Sound snare, so I used from the same kit. I like that smack. And then with it, I just didn't have enough impact in this. Once the mix got really dense, I added these like, once I had the mix almost done.
It's all over again.
Let me see, there's not a ton of tom hits in this song. So the toms are on just stereo tracks. It's not that exciting, but try these. So again, API, channel strip, boosting some top, cutting out 500 hertz, and boosting some 100 hertz. Here it is. On. I'm hitting the compressor pretty good on those. And then I'm doing a bigger dip at 320 and then 2.2K. Make them thuddier and more hollow, and that's going to the parallel. Without that parallel, they're softer, and with them, they're a little more compressed and thicker. So we're onto the stereo overheads now. Simple. I just did some, I didn't even boost any bottom, cut some 180, left that alone this time, 10K top. Smacking the compressor a little bit at ratio 2. Yeah, I didn't really cut too much. I didn't add any bottom. Sometimes I'll add bottom just to make the drum sound fuller. I ended up using the Zener. This is cool on overheads. I don't use it a lot on real drums for overheads. It worked on this kit to add a little more squishy realness to it. And then I dipped this, was a little harsh. With that snare smacking right there. And then here it's dipping. that goes to the parallel too. I didn't think, I thought maybe I took this out, but I guess I didn't. So without the parallel, and then with the parallel. And then there's a room on this kit. Same thing, this time I cut up more 500. Distressor. Got it in nuke mode, but I'm really not compressing hard, if you see. It's more for the sound. A lot of times I'll land that harder, but the way this sounds in this kit, there's some 3 dB hits once in a while. But I didn't want to overly squish it and make it sound like too fake. And then I did some big dips here. Took out this, stopped competing with the lower mids and the kick drum and all, and really darkened the top. And this kit has a reverb channel on it and a delay. So the reverb's doing this. Kind of a big lush verb sound. And I just added some 10K. I got the compressor setting, but it's not really kicking in. And there's a delay, it's really on that snare. It's kind of dark. I'm just kind of adding some 8K and cutting a little 700. Compressors on here too. So without it, with it. It's creating that little slap off time in it. So then the drum bus, here's the drums. Then here's what I put on the drum bus, an SSL. I set the compressor or the dynamic section to the G series. I just like how it was squishing. I got the mix knob roll back to 39%, so I'm not really full on hitting it, but added some top. Took out just a tiny bit, like 400 hertz or 520 hertz. Then came back again after a car test, cut a lot more of the bottom off, 30 hertz, and did some more low end dips. Just to try to get that, it sounds good with that bass, but when the bass was there, it was clouding it. So that was the whole kit there. We'll shrink that down, and then there's percussion that happens. And both of those I kind of treated similar. Boosted a lot of 10K, some cutting, didn't do anything else. Added this air enhancer. Just for that top end. This one, boosted 10K here, did some cut, again, not much stuff. It kind of smooths it out a little bit and then just made it bright. And that's kind of it for those. And those kind of stayed static. I didn't even ride those automation-wise. There's a bass folder. Let's turn that off for now. And here's the raw bass he gave me. That he did. Sounds good. But I wanted to change it up. Make it a little fuller. There's a ton of bottom end there. I probably undid that later in a way, but I didn't change it here. It's probably where I started that first rough mix. And then, yep, I came back here, and instead of changing up the SSL, instead of losing what I had, I just cut it off here and did big dips. It took off a lot of that bottom, took out this ring here. It's just rumbling once in a while. And then this one is just dipping down. And I added a lot of doinky, mid-rangey top. the cut. And this is my mono up the middle bass. And I decided to parallel it over to here, kind of like an effects end, and use the Roland Dimension D on it so I can get a stereo width. So now it's wide. And I use this Sound Toy Seaman EQ, which is great. Just adding some mid, like 300 hertz, lower mids. Again, I did a little dipping here. And I just did this, since the other one I made bright, I didn't want this to poke through the ton. Now if you put them together, this is up the middle and this is on the side. So they go into this folder here, and that folder has this on it. Now I didn't have this originally. Once the mix started getting really dense and I was checking in the car, we just kept feeling like the bass wasn't defined enough, it wasn't punching through this heavy mix. So let me see if I can.
Undercover, we wait for the storm to recede.
Yeah, it's just punching through more. And then I did a Renaissance comp, or not a Renaissance comp, a Reaper compressor, sorry, Renaissance is waves. Reaper compressor, sorry. And that is only because I'm triggering it off the kick drum. So if you notice, on the kick I'm coming out, let's see if I can find it. The kick drum right here, parallel. So I'm coming out actually 3 and 4. And in order to do that, you come over to the bass channel here, and I made these, instead of a 2-channel, I made it a 4-channel. And when you do that, you get an extra path into this channel. So if you watch this, see these 2 channels here are bass, see these other 2 here, that's the kick drum hits. So inside here, you can open this up, you can see bass guitar passes through 1 and 2 left and right to 1 and 2 left and right. But the kick drum comes in here on these auxiliary ends. And down here, for detector, I say auxiliary. So if I put it on preview, see, we hear the kick drum hitting through. And it's pushing that bass down for me. So that's why it sounds a little funny soloed. The kick is shoving it down. And I set up a VCA a lot, like I did over here. This VCA is controlling my drums, this fader here. And this one is just controlling overheads and ambience. Because sometimes I like to ride, I kind of like to ride fills and, courses up loud or something. This song doesn't have many drum fills, but I kind of like to push them up and give excitement. Even on this more fake kit, I think it makes it more real. And I kind of like riding a separate VCA than the actual channel, because if I later feel like, oh, all those moves I made between those 2 channels are not right, I can just go over to the actual 2 channels and move them up a little bit. And I don't affect what I did for automation. Same with the drums. If I decided, oh, I need to bump this fader up or down a little bit, that's just controlling my overall, but this still has all my moves in it. So I can, erase it, start over, whatever. Same with the bass. I did my VCA here. That way, if I later go, it's too much overall, but I like the rides I did, just pull the overall down a little bit here. That's all. All right, so moving on now to high strings. Now this, if you notice, I did ride some of the automation on the tracks. These are just more problematic things that end up having to change over time, like, oh, too much drums, too much bass. So here we go on strings. Let me turn the plugins off. Here's a string part. That's how they sounded. I used Waves Abbey Road Saturator to get some grit on them. And this EMT to widen it. It made super lush sounding. And those are going into just the strings. I'm not using any other verbs on that. So they laid in the track nicely with it wide.
Time marches on and we follow in its steps, never quite drawing near.
Now watch how big they get when I put this EMT on.
Time marches on and we follow in its steps, never quite drawing near. It doesn't stop, doesn't wait.
They kind of get out of the way of the middle. So that's the high strings. So now we're on to this keyboard here, which is like a whirly Rhodes. Okay, it's how it sounded when Bronson did it. And then I cranked the top out of this like crazy and pulled some of the bottom back. So yeah, again, I told you the theme, I'm using API a lot all over this. Smacking the compressor a good bit too. I kind of wanted it smaller, like not so hammery, and I mean so deep, because that bass is really deep. Use this vertigo, kind of clamp down on it. This does a good like clean SSL style smack. And then this one here is a little different. It's another one that's kind of deep. Channel strip again. I did add 200 on this, but I'm smashing it. 50 hertz, I'm cutting out the top around, it's like, what is that? Probably about 13K, or maybe 15K. I'm boosting 7K here, just get some crunch. And this, I actually went to, I use this on a mix bus a lot, most times. I'm actually not using it on this song, I don't think. No, I didn't. I didn't even use my oxide tape that I normally use on a mix. I guess I didn't need it. But I'm using this for a subtle compression. It's kind of hard to turn it off here. Softens the top a little bit. And then this guy, he's really clamped. I love this. It's a free compressor. This thing clamps and sounds so good. So I'm smashing him with that, and then I wanted a kind of a weird wide effect on this. Now it's wobbly stereo. I'm controlling it with this some more in this mid-range, phony kind of, it's like it was holding its nose. It's that. And that kept hearing that ring, brightening more. And then I added this key verb. It's real subtle. And that is actually an AMS without it. With it, it's light.
Shelter is all we need.
Them dry.
Drawing near. It doesn't stop.
Okay, now we're on to an acoustic guitars. So his acoustic he did. I actually had to make these smaller too. I use the Shep's channel for mostly de-essing, and he had a good clean preset, but I kind of tweaked it a little bit more. I'm kind of smacking these hard. I mean, these guitars don't sound that bad at all. But this wasn't supposed to be a song that Bronson didn't want those acoustics driving the song. He kind of wanted the acoustics in the background a little bit. So I made it smaller. Ended up using this reflection room. I'm gonna stop it. See, here's without it. Now let me turn the reverb off here. See, it just kind of stops. If I put this reflection on, I don't know if you can tell, it's very subtle. It's given a little space for it to sit in. And then I'm using this to dip down this upper top because I wanted to make other things bright. And again, we didn't want it to be the focal point, so I didn't really want to hear the strumminess. I actually think I brought some of it back a little more when we decided later that he was like, yeah, the acoustic is a little too soft. I kind of wanted to drive it harder as well, but now I did this parallel. I'm gonna put a little verb on it. And that's using over here the H reverb from Waves. So I did a parallel to this, but this I just stayed in the box of the parallel. And that comes over to this channel. And on that, I started with this Pultec. Brightening it actually. Because I knew I was gonna darken it and smash it with this. I'm using this Comp 2 setting I like for the acoustics. Fast release. So without it, it's kind of smashing it, puts it in its place. So without here's just the acoustic in the track without that parallel.
Until it disappears.
And with
From a gray sky dawning, rain is music too.
it keeps it consistent sitting over there. And then he's got this drone guitar, delay drone it's called. It's already wet with a lot of effects on it. Delays and stuff. So I used a Fab filter and did some crazy stuff. Again, we didn't want this to really be a driving force in the way of those keys, so it's got all that action going on. Took all that low end out, and that had like that honk in it. Sounds like an AM radio almost. But then I did add a good bit of brightness. 1.3 area, almost 5K. I'm dipping down right here. Control some of that harsh pick smack. Then I use a LA3A on it. Lightly. This I put on actually to control the volume a little bit, and I let it hit the compressor just maybe 1 dB. This goes into a Lexicon 480L. You hear that space it's in now? That's the same as the vocal sharing. Right here. Small hall. Then more green guitars. So then we have a noodle guitar, he called it, which is this dude here. And this just has. So that's what Bronson played. It sounds fine, but for not wanting a lot of acoustics in a song, it's probably recorded too boomy and up in your face, which would have been a good acoustic song. But we'll save that for next time. So I made it smaller with this guy. Took out a lot of 100. So it's just clickier, buzzier, bright top. Put the vocal delay on it, which was the Echo Boy, I believe. Yeah, I hear it. Sound Toy. And then I did a slap. As an AMS, I believe. No, yeah, AMS is slap. It actually has a neat effect for the guitar. That's what we use on vocals, but I threw the guitar and liked it.
And from a gray
So then we moved on. The next heavy guitars are a little problematic for me. I don't know what amp he used. It was a UAD amp, I think, in the box. But he went too heavy-handed with it. I don't have that in my session. I just have it printed as audio. But it was definitely too thick for me. That's what it sounded like. You get that in a track. Hear how big it sounds? So to make that work, I ended up using Fab Filter first and smashing a lot of dynamic EQ on it. So here it is. Is now. Taking all this low out. Ton of this. It still sounds, like a fuzz guitar, but I want to take a lot of that low. It's still kind of ratty sounding. That's what he wanted. Then I use this SSL on it to really smash it hard. I took a little 800 out, but I didn't take any more lows out here. I didn't even use the filters. Cutting more 3K. And then I ran that, let me see, I ran it into this parallel. So we're hearing a parallel there, which is kind of unfair, I guess. So with the parallel on, it's really subtle in that. And then I put some guitar verb on it, which is that H verb again, the acoustics we're using. And then I ended up deciding to do a guitar just to help it out, because that one by itself sounded weird with nothing over here. So I did a DI'd. I used a Friedman, but I set it to empty. Instead of using one of their cabs, I just went down to empty. And I'm using Cab Lab 3 from Fractal, but I'm using an IR that I just created a couple weeks ago. It's a Greenback 25 watt and a Marshall 412. This one happens to be a Royer 121 and 421. I don't remember what mic pre's I used on that particular one, but. And I wanted this one to sound a little smaller, so I took a lot of the bottom out of this amp. Push the mids up on purpose to sit with his, and that parallel. This is supposed to be kind of a wash in the background. It's not supposed to be, again, really up front. And he's got this other guitar called in-out guitar. I think it's just in the beginning and at the end. We'll go to the beginning. Just this. And he kind of had it mangled a little bit, wanted it that way. So it's already affected. And I put an API on it. Made it a little punchier in the 1.5 area. I'm boosting 240 to give a little body, but I'm also cutting 300 at the same time. Then I did an LA2A, or LA2. Just to smooth it out. Now that goes into this parallel here. And on the parallel, I add a little Pultec. Subtle. I just wanted to control that going into this. That's just helping the ringing of some of those notes stay consistent. And then I use a reverb just on this signal. And that's going into the Lexicon 480, and I got it turned down a good bit. It's pretty subtle. Then for the solo, sorry, I'm just kind of going down the tracks in channel wise so I can remember that I didn't miss anything. The solo's got a lot of stuff on it. So well, I guess I can leave that on because he gave that to me. So he gave me a mono channel here, another UAD amp, I believe. And then this channel underneath that's mono also, okay. But that's got a built-in effect with delay and all. So here's the amp sound he gave me. Again, heavy. Bronson is mainly a bass player, so maybe that's why he adds a lot of low end. So he boosted some lows here, scooped some. He had this EQ, so I left this in place because this is kind of what he wanted, so I didn't want to change it. And followed by that, he's got a little tuning action happening from Reaper. And then he's got a gate. So I left that alone, like it's part of the sound. I followed it with the UAD SSL. Soften some of this lows. Boosting to like 1.5 and about 9K in the top. So I wanted to do a weird effect on it since it's already kind of messed up, mangly sounding. So I got this Valhalla plugin on it, delay. This is a free. Now, I usually do things on send and return, but I just put this on the track, kind of almost like a guitar pedal. I blended the mix in. And then after that, I did this EQ after because I kind of wanted to control that delay as well with these dynamic EQs. Soften that to keep from poking funny. And that was biting me on another set of monitors and in the car. So when you hear it with this track, this is his delay track that went with that track. It's kind of wishy-washy all over the place, but he shoved it over there some, and I usually do that too. So I treated that one a little differently. Pushed the tops around 3K, pulled out some bottom. And really filtered out the bottom more so it doesn't rumble. But it's the top's pushed up a little bit so you get some little sparkles of action over to the right side. And together, both of them with no plugins, sounds like this. With the plugs. So I did two different things to this main one. I put it into this vocal space spread, which is the Sound Toys Micro Shift. And then the next thing I did was, I'll show you this. I'm going output 7 on my interface. And then I'm coming into this HRK unit right here. And it's a color module. It's got different modules in it. Right now, I don't have two down here. I haven't decided what I'm going to build and put in there. But I built like a tube screamer style thing, distortion here. And this is a solid state logic piece. It's supposed to sound like you're driving an SSL kind of. So can I play just that? Yeah. So here is going into that with it off. You can hear it. And if I turn it on, so I could drive it hard. And here's a tube screamer. We're probably hearing the effects a lot. So I'm using this thing really subtle, and that's why I'm using it as a parallel also. So that's just in there to give it a little crackle and buzz. And I'm actually pulling the output of it down. Sometimes I'll actually run this into this DBX right next to it. I just didn't, and it was working still. And that comes up to here on my mono channels. This mono channel's panned a little bit, just like the guitar. So it's the parallel's blending to the same direction. And with it and everything else, it just gives it a little more oomph to the whole sound. And again, these two are hooked together, but I'm automating them with this solo VCA bus right there. So in the track, now we're on to the vocals. So Bronson's lead vocals took a lot of work, and not that it needed a ton of work. It just needed to sit in the track a certain way. And this mic, this is the only thing he didn't record at his place. He recorded that here, but it was for a demo. Let me see where his. Okay, they're all going out to here. So everything I got going out to a vocal bus, I'm going to mute that for right now. Let me just do these. So we'll go down the line. Make it quick. I think these were already on. Yeah. So his main vocal was Aston Spirit mic, and it was a demo from a friend of ours who's a rep. And I think we used my Cappy VP28 for the mic pre, or we used my Chandler LTD1, like an E1073 thing. I don't know which one, I can't remember. But I thought the Aston sounded pretty good, but it's a little bright for him. The rest of his vocals, I think he just did at his place with his SM7. And that probably either went through his Great River NV mic pre, or he's got a Cappy VP26 that I built him. So here's the vocal raw, how we did it here. Let me go to a verse.
In the daylight as it's running away toward the horizon.
Okay, so since it was kind of bright, I got this Waves de-esser going.
In the daylight,
topping off the very top.
As it's running away.
Follow with another API.
Toward the horizon, the river on its way.
Took some of the chest out a little bit because he pushes lows a good bit and he's real breathy. So I didn't go too crazy on the upper top. Yeah, I didn't touch that. I did 1.5 here and I boosted about 100. I followed that with a compressor with distressor. I don't know if I used, let me see. Yeah, I think I have the compressor on here. In the daylight. Not really kicking in, it's barely touching it. So I relied on this guy here. In the daylight. Yeah. As it's running away. 3-to-1, I got the mix back a little bit. So toward the horizon, the river on its way. Those UAD ones sound like my hardware. And then I usually use their bigger Altec looking version. But I ended up just opening the free version up. So check this out. In the daylight. It's subtle, just adding a little warmth. As it's running away toward the horizon, the river on its way. This is doing a lot of controlling. Into tomorrow, where it starts all over again. For now it's good night. Yeah, I'm controlling that low. Yeah, 230. Till it disappears. And from a gray sky dawning, rain. And then I did a little more de-essing. In the daylight. It's like 6.5. Barely hitting to it. It's just hitting his loudest. Toward the horizon. His really loudest hits. And even more controlling. In the daylight. A lot of this extra plugin sometimes is me. I'm okay with a sound and I've listened to it and maybe I sent him a mix or something. Or it's just bothering me because I checked it in the car or something before he heard it. But sometimes I don't want to go back on the same plugin like this other one up here and mess with it because I like what it's doing. I'm not sure. So I might add another fab filter just to try something. And then if it ends up working, I don't want to try to screw anything up. I just leave both versions going. And then in some cases like this, I kind of want to do it after the fact. I think this, I added the de-esser, and then after a car check, I wanted to do some more taming.
The daylight
And then there's this Pultec.
as it's running away.
Now this actually is, you see it's not in, it's activated and it's on, but it's not kicked in. It kicks in on the bridge. So, or no, the quiet spot right after the solo. So this verse here, yeah, see where it kicks in? Actually, yeah, see, it's off right now, but if I drop it where he's going to start singing, it kicks in. And I just did that because it's cutting out 100 hertz, and that's it. And I actually darkened 10K. I darkened it with attenuation a little bit there.
Shading the sunlight, it shows the way.
Yeah, that lower
A
note,
bright orange morning.
cut that out a little bit just to make it sit in the track better. So it's right at the end of this.
Shading the sunlight.
All right, and this also decided to go up parallel because I felt like it just wasn't sitting in the track. So that's actually going out to the, can I mute this maybe? See if this works.
Shading the sunlight.
That's hitting the warm audio, 1176,
Shows the way.
medium attack.
A bright
But I'm digging
orange
in pretty hard
morning
between 3 to 5 dB.
to a brand new
I didn't go into any other EQ or anything. I just came straight out of that into the
Into the blue
center
we go.
channel
Don't stop
on channel 8.
until we must.
And just having that mixed with it. So here's straight out again without that.
Shading the sunlight.
Then I'll add this parallel.
It shows the way.
Pushes them really forward with that
A
warm audio.
bright orange morning.
And it actually puts a little hair on the sound. And then I went through an EP34 right here, tape.
Shading the sunlight.
Let me do a verse.
Daylight as it's running away.
It's got that old wash to it. And then I'm using a fab filter behind that to shape that too. Here it is without it.
Daylight as it's running away toward the horizon.
I put it on.
Forever on
See, I really kind of thinned out that bottom.
into tomorrow where it starts all over again.
Then we did space, Vox, or spread, I mean. And that was the,
Daylight
this is just widening them a
as
tiny
it's
bit.
running away.
I hardly have it on him. Sometimes I do a little, actually a little more than that. But I just wanted a touch in there to widen him with the keyboard. Yeah, there it is.
As it's running away.
And then some delay with the
Daylight
Echo Boy.
as it's running away
Then we finish it off with the Lexicon.
toward the horizon.
That's the more hollow hall sound. All right, and then he does, there's a harmony that rides along with him. And he already had this legacy version 1176 on his session when he gave it to me, so I left it.
Daylight as it's running away.
So I put one of those Siemens for it. I wanted to drive the mids into the compressor and add a little top to it.
Daylight as it's running away.
To give that compressor a little more edge to sound like my warm audio kind of.
Tomorrow
Then I
where
de-essed
it
it.
starts all over again.
API, putting a little bottom and top in it.
Now it's good night.
Mostly mid-range. And I pulled out 240 hertz again. And then here, yeah, I did a little boost on the top and let this bite here at 2.5.
Where it starts all over again.
Oops, let me turn it on.
But now it's good night.
Yeah, I wanted that to poke through more,
Until
and that was getting too thick.
beneath the starlight, until it disappears.
Then I washed him in the 480
And
LX
from
gun.
a gray sky dawning, rain is beautiful.
And then there's another harmony. It only happens once on that bridge. And again, he gave me 1176 on it with a little waves tuning. So I left that in place. And that's this guy here.
Time marches on and we fall.
So again, I use this EQ to drive into that 1176 some to give it some hair.
Time marches on and we.
And sibilance. Then some EQ.
Time marches on and we follow in its steps. Never quite.
This was the same thing. I kind of copied this over. It's almost the same setting, I believe, as the other harmony.
Time marches on and we follow in its steps.
Wash, taking all that out.
Never quite draw.
And all that really sub stuff didn't need to be there. And then I spread it, but at the same time, I'm using a mix knob, and I'm not using this as a sending signal. I'm just doing it right on the channel, and it's kind of acting as a room. Check it out.
Time marches on and we follow in its steps. Never.
It kind of placed him in a room over there, which worked against all of the vocals together.
Time marches on and we follow in its steps.
Now, all those go into a vocal folder. I don't usually do that, but when I was mixing in the box, for some reason I did. And, I just left it that way because it ended up being easier when I wanted to overall do a little treatment. So all the vocals are run through this.
Time marches on and we follow in its steps, never quite drawing near.
So I'm doing a reverse dynamic thing here. I'm boosting it, but I'm kind of, yeah, actually, no, I pushed this up, and I think I ended up deciding to pull it back down. I had this up a little higher to give it a little sizzle, but I think I decided to tuck them back. So it's pulling down, but you see the rise in it. I think I'm starting at 5K and adding a little lift to the whole vocals.
Time marches on and we follow in its steps. Never.
So it's just doing a little controlling. That's the ending vocals. So let's go to the big vocals at the end here. Now sometimes I'll go in and I'll literally treat every vocal individually on a bunch of vocals, like background vocals, but if I don't have to, I won't. And I didn't go in and put EQs on each one of these vocals and treat them like their own vocal, which sometimes you have to do. I just ran them into this, and I said, well, let me just start with the plugin and see how they sound. So the way he gave them to me sounded like this.
In darkest night before the day.
So I just started with this Focusrite.
In darkest night before the day.
Really scooping out a ton at like 330 hertz. Taking a lot of lows out at 33 hertz, which does nothing down there anyway. Kind of like a low pass. Boosting 15K and boosting, I don't even know what that is, 12.1K here.
In darkest night before.
And I got a shelf at 139, and I'm got a compressor going. Fast attack, fast release.
In darkest night.
And that's doing some de-essing for me.
New light is never far.
And I'm not driving it too, yeah, I'm driving in this a little bit. I'm not driving that too hard up there for some grit. Okay, so I added the air EQ after that. I did a lot of boosting on this group of vocals.
Night before the day.
I wanted that to sizzle, almost like a choir.
New light is never far.
And then this guy, this Acme comp, I just got this. This thing's really cool. So let's smash that.
In darkest night before the day. New light is never far away.
The thing clamps great. And again, I didn't do send in returns like I normally would. I just put things right on there. I don't usually do that. And I was, you know, you sometimes get in that zone where you're mixing and you're kind of like an autopilot and you're just going. And I look up and I'm like, oh, you know, I did this and I did that. So kind of going through this after the fact is funny sometimes. I use Vintage Verb, the 70 setting right on the channel.
In dark darkest night before the day.
And then I did their little modular thing. And this is only 14%. This is a neat little effect too.
In darkest night before the day.
Better if I show that without that reverb. So it sounds like this.
In darkest night before the day.
That effect alone I like on keys and vocals sometimes, just like that. But on this, I needed to wash the vocals back. And I decided to put this after the reverb, so it's kind of making the reverb do that modulation thing that you get on some old reverbs.
In darkest night.
Then some more controlling. Doing it this way, I'm compressing the reverbs and all too, you know, not just the vocals. So it's kind of neat. I'm kind of controlling this top with. That upper top I'm smashing too.
Never far away.
Which is cool because it's got a lift to it, but then it smashes down when it gets, you know, past its threshold. I love that plugin, Fab Filter. Lexicon reverb.
In darkest night before the day.
If it didn't already have enough effects with the Valhalla unit, I put a 480O on it. Why not? So here it is in the track.
Chasing the day.
Without all that stuff.
Keep chasing the day. Never far away. In darkest night.
I didn't need to do really any parallel type stuff on that, and sometimes I will, but on this I really don't think I did. And this, let me see. It's at 90%, so it's not all the way wet, but it's not really that dry either. And then there's this one guy here. He's just doing these answers now. Bronson did this, and it was kind of, you know, meant to be distorted and driven.
Chase the day.
So that's how it's printed, kind of distorted. So I didn't want to change it too much. And but I brightened it up even with the 1.5.
Chase the day.
And that barky mid-range distortion area. And I'm smashing a little bit.
New light, it's never far.
I'm not really smashing anything. It hits it 2 dB once in a while.
Chase the day.
And then that's going to that tape echo. The EP34.
Chase the day.
Lexicon 480L.
New light, it's never far.
It's supposed to be just way under the track.
It's night before the day. Keep chasing the daylight. It's never far away. Chasing.
So that's kind of it. Again, it's my EV34, and I sometimes have a lot more effects in this. Call it up because I'll call up like a big library of effects that I go to, and I just turn on and activate the ones that I'm going to use for a session. But I didn't even pull in my effects template. I don't know why. I just was in a weird zone working on this, and I was just adding things one at a time. So, but there's some other third-party stuff I grab a lot, but this time it seems like I really laid heavily on a lot of UAD stuff, which is cool. That slap effect was the AMS. Lexicon 480L, always great. I didn't use any plates in this song, surprisingly. Sound Choices Echo Boy for delay. The spread was this thing on the vocals and a guitar. EP34. And on the lead vocals, like I said, I used this, where on the background vocal I used Vintage Verb and that little space modulator. And I didn't do effect directly on that. I did the width, or more of the room effect that I talked about on this guy.
Quite drawing me.
This is a great plugin. And I have the actual Eventide plugin. And I keep forgetting to use it. I don't know why, this guy. But that's what the microshift's kind of doing, is the H3000 style. But I didn't use this guy in the session. Let me go over a couple other things real quick. The keys, I said, you know, I'll go to a bus, and here's the bus. And I actually have some plugins on that bus. So all the keys are getting treated like this. So here's just the keys a minute. Let me go to a verse. Put oxide tape on it. Digging a little more, a little crunch to it. Then I did some more controlling. This is working, listening, and then you kind of get stuck in your little bubble here, and I'm not comparing as much to other music as I should. And then I flip to other monitors. And the other thing I'll show, I have a little tiny speaker up there. It's a little passive speaker, but I just come out of the headphone amp. I wired a plug, a TRS plug into stereo on one end to mono speaker, so I could hear both left and right out of the one. But I'll check things in there, and that's where I came back and was like, I gotta add this, I gotta take this top out. So the strings, let's see where strings are happening. You just do it at the beginning. That's just a little oxide tape on that too. Just to make the upper top have a little grit and cut through the mix. And then the acoustics, which I messed with a lot anyway. I used the Abbey Road saturator on it. Again, add texture and grit. I'm mixing it in though, it's not all the way full wet. And sometimes I'll do that to vocals. I'll put a fab filter or something on this to overall treat the vocals. I didn't need to, so we can listen a little bit of this whole thing now. Like I said, I check this speaker over here sometimes. I don't know if you probably can't even see it in this camera or the other camera, but I got a little speaker up there. It's like a little bookshelf speaker.
Chasing the daylight as it's running away toward the horizon, forever on its way into tomorrow where it starts all over again.
And you can see I did do some automation through riding these fills and things right here. Right there on the overheads and ambient room mic. There's a few drum bus moves up there. Bass, I always ride bass up and down, but it's pretty subtle. This keyboard, this strings, I did some swells on my controller here just to give it some life. Same with guitars. I rode the guitars and this little noodly guitar that he plays right here. I did a little riding. We kept it quiet in the mix though.
Until it disappeared, and from a gray sky dawning, rain is music to the ear. Undercover, we wait for the stars.
So it's kind of pushed back in the track. And then we'll go back to the ending here.
Keep chasing the daylight, this night before the day. Keep chasing.
So that when all that's done, here's his mix again up top. I like to keep the rough mix up top.
Never quite drawing near. It doesn't stop, doesn't wait.
And his ending.
Keep chasing the daylight. It's never far.
It's hard to hear the separation with the low end rumbling like that. And this pink area is where I'm going to print, which I already did it, but I took it out for this video. But it's where I come right out and I just print it back in. So I can just go straight up the top here and say, I'm going to print, for instance, this. Put it in record mode.
Chasing the daylight as it's running away toward the horizon, forever on its way into tomorrow where it starts all over again. But now it's good night until then. The starlight until it disappeared, and from a gray sky dawn.
Okay, that's kind of how I run through that and just do the whole song. I print it out. But I did notice something that I overlooked when I was showing you guys the bass stuff, and I might have jumped it when I changed batteries in my camera. Important guy here that I added last. The bass wasn't feeling full enough, even though it was kind of big and I started chopping it up and smashing it. I added this Brainworks subharmonic generator to it. So let's can this guy a second. So there's the bass, and when I add this sub to it, you know how much it drops down and deep it got? I forgot to show you that, but I noticed even when I was just running that. Here it is.
As it's running away
Listen to the real low, sub-low stuff.
toward the horizon, forever on its way
Fills in that bottom.
into tomorrow.
And also on this, I didn't mention, I don't always do this either, but on this bass, I'm actually, not the stereo bass, but this bass, or actually I am this, because I'm doing the whole folder. I'm running that out paralleled 5 and 6, which I said was the drums. And I don't always do that, but that means that that bass is also going out to the overstayer, to the distressor, I mean, the TG2, and back in 5 and 6 here. Again, I was in autopilot mode, so I forgot all about that. So here's, it's real subtle, but yeah, I'm not even lighting up the compressor right there without the drums, but it's just adding that extra little bit of glue running out.
The horizon, forever on its way.
So I'll put a link to Bronson's lyric video he did of this song, so you can go check it out. But that's the breakdown of Chasing Daylight with Bronson Wagner. So I hope you enjoyed watching it. I'm going to have my Fulcrum system back set up again. So I'm going to do a video of that. I'm actually going to do a video of some modifications I'm going to do to my patch bay. I got to do some changes to the TT bay, and how I'm going to incorporate the Fulcrum back into my system for doing more stems like this and breaking out to more individual pieces of hardware, and how I do that and keep it all phase locked. But that's it. That was my mix breakdown for the day. And thanks for checking it out. And please like and subscribe and check out the next one. Thanks a lot. Bye.